Okay, so to everybody on the call, my name is Chigoziem, Mottoh, affectionately known as Goz. I'm a managing principal consultant at Capco. I've been at Capco for, at least 8 years now. I work primarily in the strategy and operating model space within capital markets, which basically means I just advise investment banks how they should be structured, what they should do, that sort of thing. I also run the Capco Optimize capability within the organization, which is based around accelerating transformation within organizations. So, for example, if there's any kind of change work that's going on in an organization at any scale, if you want to do it well and if you want to do it quickly, people come and talk to me. I'm gonna pass over to Eddie. We have one more of our colleagues that's joining, Stacey, who we're just waiting on. But Eddie, if you want to introduce yourself.
Yeah, my name is Eddie Woods. I'm Senior Vice President of Global. I'm responsible for global strategic pursuits for Wipro. So what that means is I lead a team who runs large deals globally. I've been at Wipro for about 7 months. Prior to this, I was at several other firms, but I looked at the opportunity to grow and work with Wipro. It's a fun opportunity with us right now. I'll talk a little bit about how I got here, because it's one of the relevant points about having a professional network. Because I got a job that wasn't posted anywhere, and it was because of my professional network. So that's one of the things that I really want to impress upon you as professionals in your career and your development.
Okay, thanks very much, Eddie. Stacey's still having some issues getting on. So from my perspective, I think it probably makes sense if we kick off with a bit of the material and then we can wait for Stacey to join when she can. So kind of following on from what Eddie just said in terms of your professional network, if you look at the title of this session, it's about developing yourself by investing in yourself. And one of the things that I'm going to touch upon is around how to build that framework of people around you to support you to be successful. Now, I actually have a dedicated session on this in the BYP coming up in about an hour or so. So if there are any questions or that we don't get to answer in this session, please feel free to join me in that dedicated session where we're going to look at these 3 main topics, and I can go over it in a ton more detail, give a lot more experience. So the three key parts of the framework I'm talking about are around sponsorship, mentorship, and advocacy. Okay, sponsorship, mentorship, and advocacy. Now I'm going to start off with mentoring, because that's the one that everyone's generally familiar with, right? People are familiar with having a mentor or being a mentor. I wanted to talk specifically about what exactly that means for those who do not know. So there are some people that may be new to this, and also to kind of maybe broaden the horizon of what people think is actually available in this space. So a mentor, think of a mentor as like a coach with a specialist skill set that you are looking to improve upon or engaging. Now, in a lot of organizations, especially if you work in consultancy like Eddie and I, there's normally a structure in place where you kind of have a mentor. So within Capco, we have the concept of a coach, who is your internal person who looks after your career and supports you in that way. The type of interpersonal relationship you actually have with this person is quite important, because trust is a significant factor with establishing a good mentoring relationship. You want to be able to come and talk to this person about anything at any point in time to get guidance in that particular area. So you may have a mentor that is specifically dedicated to progressing your career. So they give you advice about maybe how to navigate the organization, what types of things you want to get involved in to boost your profile and your CV and things like that, who to connect with in the organization. Your mentor should be able to, in whatever area you're engaged with that person, be able to solve your problems. Okay, so that's quite an important skill set that you should be looking at in another person. I'm going to speed through this, I'm sorry, only because of time, but again, dedicated session to go through all of that. Hello, Stacey.
Hello, sorry I'm late, had connection trouble.
No problem. Stacey, I've just kind of kicked off with my section. I'll hand over to you when I'm done, and then we can go from
there.
Okay, so we've got mentorship, mentors, right? So I'm a mentor. I've been a mentor for a number of years. I will bet my bottom dollar that the other two people on this call have been mentors to a huge amount of people over a number of years as well. So if there are any questions around what a good mentoring relationship looks like, how to get involved, how to approach somebody, feel free to reach out. The one thing that I would note for this particular part is that your mentor can potentially change. Sorry, your mentors, because you don't only have to have one, can change and should change progressively throughout your career and progressively throughout life as you move on to different stages. As you look to pivot into different areas, you can look for people that can, give you that helping hand and provide that support and advice that you might need at any point in time. Next, I'm going to move on to advocates. This is really easy to explain. As the word suggests, these are just vocal supporters of yours. Okay. So in general, a mentor is someone that's probably more senior or more specifically, more experienced than you at something. Advocates you need across the range. These are people that speak to the credibility of the work that you do, to the person that you are, and are happy to come out and support you when in X, Y, and Z. They may not necessarily have any influence to change any situation, but they are just a supporter of yours in general. So if you think about it, it's actually quite important to have those at a more junior level than you, at the level that you're at, and a more senior level than you. They may not know the specifics around what you're working on. They may not know the specifics around your career, but they're willing and able to speak up in your defense in any kind of situation. Okay. Really, really broad. And then finally, I leave this one to last because it's the most important. So hopefully this is the one that remains. Sponsors. Okay. Sponsorship is something that I kind of consciously recognize late on in my career, as a lot of people do. But a sponsor is essentially an advocate with influence. This is somebody in the room where decisions are being made about your career, about anything that you're trying to achieve, and have the ability that when they speak, people listen. Now, that may not be your manager. It may be your manager's manager. It may be somebody in a completely different space, but that is in those rooms where, okay, decisions are being made. I need somebody to be able to speak up for me. I need somebody who, when they speak for me, it carries weight. Okay. So again, it'd be great to have as many sponsors as you can, but more than likely in any organization, there aren't actually that many people that have the capability to do that. So think about in any situation, this, and I'm talking mainly from a work perspective, but obviously this is something for consideration in other areas as well. Think about who those people are, who carries that influence, talk to people to be able to find who they are, and then find your way to connect with that kind of person that can be able to sponsor you. A sponsor does not have to be a mentor. You do not have to go to this. This may not be the person that you go to on a regular basis to solve problems and things like that, but they have the knowledge of what you're doing and the ability to speak to what you are doing. Okay. So mentors, advocates, sponsors. I have a dedicated session coming up in like an hour or so that's going to talk to this, where I can answer all of your questions, and I'll go into a ton more detail. But as a summary, that is what it is. What last thing before I forget? This is Black Young Professionals, right? That's what this event is about. Those three things that I've mentioned, I haven't described what type of person that has to be. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a Black person. It doesn't necessarily have to be somebody that looks or is exactly like you. They just have to be able to perform those roles that I've mentioned to get you where you want to get to. Cool. So I'm going to pass over to Stacey, who's obviously joined and has another part of the investing in yourself framework that we want to talk about.
Hi, everybody. Sorry I joined a little bit late. I'm Stacey Kruckel, and I'm the Chief Marketing Officer here at Capco. And I've been at Capco for about 4.5 years, and I have over 25 years of experience in the financial services industry and now in the consulting industry. And I know that the session today is really, focused on how you develop yourself by investing in yourself. And I think the points that I wanted to make are, there are ways that you can make yourself invaluable in your industry, at your company, et cetera. And the way that I've done that is to make sure that I'm really an expert in the field that I've been hired into, and really encourage you all to think about how you can become SMEs to make yourselves invaluable to your company and within the industry. And so basically there are 4 main things that I focused on in my career that I also share with people that work for me and mentor about how they can make themselves invaluable in their field. And I think the first one is, very simple, get credentialed, whatever that means for whatever industry you're in. So for me, after I got my university degree, I knew that I wanted to move up the ranks and be a senior manager. So I made sure that I got an MBA, and I was really focused on making sure that I got an MBA from a certain kind of school, and then went on to do other credentials as well, so that literally sometimes I got in the door for job interviews because they looked at my CV and saw that I had certain credentials, went to schools, certain schools, was a member in American Marketing Association or whatever marketing association it is, etc. So that made them had greater faith in me automatically because I had credentials. And clearly the credentials vary, right, according to the industry you're in. So in marketing, if you're in the UK, you can get SIM certified. If you're a developer, you can get certified as a Scrum Master. There are many different ways to get credentialed, but having credentials helps to open the door. So that's one thing, get credentialed. I think the second thing that's really worked for me is make sure that you stay on top of what's going on in your industry. So I read the FT every day. I read the New York Times. I read financial press. So that if ever I'm in a conversation about something, I can chime in because I know what's going on in the industry. And I can speak very intelligently about it. And that also helps to build your personal brand. And again, makes people have faith that you kind of know what's going on. So make sure you read the financial press or whatever the press is that's relevant to your industry, stay up to date so that you can have those conversations as they come up and engage in those conversations intelligently. The third thing that's really worked for me is to stay on top of what competitors are doing in whatever industry you're in. So I always knew, I worked in banking, I always knew in the particular area of marketing that I was in, what the competitors were doing. So I could say, well, so-and-so does it this way, but I think a more effective way is to do it this X, Y, and Z way. And I think having that knowledge in your head, meaning that I was constantly checking competitor websites, I was looking and reading about what the competitors were doing, again, helps to show that you are an invaluable SME and that you can add value to whatever business or nonprofit that you're in. And I think the next and last thing is just become an SME in your field. So I'm a marketer. I read a lot about marketing. I read stuff in the financial press. I read marketing publications. I make sure I stay on top of the trends in the industry so that I can add value by adding new ideas for my company, for the people that work with me. But also I try to be open to ideas from my colleagues, junior people as well as senior people, and take what's new and exciting in the industry and see if it's applicable to my company and then how I can add value. To make sure it adds value to the company. So those are the things that I think have really made me become kind of a go-to person in marketing, not only here at Capco, but in the businesses that I've worked for and other companies. And I think those are 4 tips that may help you. So just to refresh before I turn it over to Eddie, get credentialed, whatever that means for you in your industry. Stay on top of what's going on in your industry by reading the press or whatever publications you have to read to make sure that you stay abreast of what's going on. Know what your competitors are doing and take the time to take courses, attend industry events free or paid, network with other people in your industry so that you become an SME in your field. So I'm going to turn it over to Eddie for his section and happy to answer questions at the end. Eddie?
Yes, thanks, Stacey. I just want to say I wish I met Gaz like 30 years ago. I mean, the advice he's giving you guys are spot on. I really want to give my perspective as, I progressed to be a senior executive. I'm 2 levels off from our CEO. But the advice that we're giving you is definitely sound, as I've seen through my career, because I've definitely had sponsors and advocates on what I've done. And then from the mentorship, what Gaz is saying, we are Black young professionals. I still like to think of myself as young. But I have to recognize many of your sponsors, because where we are today in advocates, won't be Black, because there are particular industries that have accepted and adopted, having Black senior professionals, but it's still a limited number. But there are people who genuinely want to help you. But a lot of that will come from not out of the kindness of their heart. It'll come out of what Stacey discussed about being good, right? You get sponsors and advocates from being good at your job and being specialized. You can't take anything away from doing that. Once you do that, you will begin to have sponsors, advocates, and recognition. I want to talk a little bit about a couple of things, and specifically professional network. Your professional network plants the seeds for your career 5, 10, 15 years down the road. I was joking with someone one day where I said, hey, basically, I have a relationship with someone who's a senior person over at Amazon, you know, because I worked with him 20 years ago when before Amazon really existed, you know, we built our relationship. So now I could pick up a phone and call him and talk to him about stuff. And, you know, there may be some of you who are entrepreneurs out there who want to run your own business. And you say, hey, I don't want to climb the ladder like you have, Eddie, but you need to recognize that the professional relationships you develop will help you find partners to drive business and customers. You know, people want to work with people they know, and they'll give you an opportunity to get the door open for your first meeting, right? Those relationships will get you the first meeting. Your skills and knowledge will give you the second and third meeting. So you have to look around the room in your professional network and cultivate that knowledge. And when you work in a group with teams, people are evaluating you, recognize it or not, as you're part of that team, because they say down the road, hey, I want Gaz on my team on my next project, because if it's do or die, I know he can deliver. And it may be unspoken, but people recognize your contributions and the things that you have to say. And as you move more senior, you know, one of the things that Stacey talked about was having an industry point of view. That's very important as you really move up the ranks. Like, you're in the room because of your qualifications. Now, when they're looking for you as a leader, they want to know, what is your perspective? Not you could read what's happening on their website. You could say, hey, in capital market, like one of the questions I got asked once in an interview was like, Eddie, you know, what do you think the deal trends are? And I was able to answer this person in segment and say, hey, by industry, by size of bank, this is the trend. It wasn't something I read. It was knowledge that I gained from knowing my industry, and I became more valuable to them. And they said, hey, this is the type of person I want, because he can provide leadership. And I just want to give an example of how I got where I'm at. So my boss is the chief growth officer, direct reporting to the CEO. She called me when she accepted the job and said, Eddie, I want you on my team. And that's because we've worked together. So we worked together at another firm. You know, we went our separate ways, and actually the last time we parted, it didn't work well because I quit. So I said, I like you, I don't like the firm. But yet we had a mutual respect enough that when she had a great opportunity, I was the person that she called. My job prior to that, and this is to Gaz's point about having sponsors and advocates, I wasn't even in the room. A senior person left the firm, became president of an operating group, and said, hey, I need someone in sales to lead my sales organization. He reached out to people I know, and they said, hey, you need to talk to Eddie Woods. And I get a phone call from a recruiter, but it shows how things happen where you don't even know. You're not even in the room where it happens, like Hamilton. You're not in the room where it happens, but there's a discussion being made, but it shows the power of your network. So you really have to make sure you deliver when you're on a team, you know, beyond anything else, because you don't know where these people will end up down the road. And then it will bear fruit for you later. The other thing that's kind of tangentially that I do want to talk about is when you have mentors, true mentors, you need to gain the knowledge that they have. Even when you're participating and you may be, you know, you feel like you're junior on a project, the most important thing you can gain is the knowledge that I have of why I made a decision. You know, you can do the output, but understand my logic, because that's going to arm you for future. And that's how you're going to contribute to conversations. What I tell people is more important to listen than to speak. So then when you speak, you have something intelligent to say. Because I know some people believe, hey, if I just talk over the next guy, hey, we all sounded intelligent. We as senior leaders walk out the room and say that person was an idiot. They added no value. They parroted what someone else said. We're smart enough to distinguish the noise from the true knowledge. So it's important for you to understand the logic, you know, because typically a leader will look at a chart and see something in the numbers that you haven't seen. And you'll be like, well, how did they see that? How did they know? They're not magical. That's 20 or 30 years of experience that's saying, hey, if I see this numerical trend, it typically means this. So you need to understand that logic. Take advantage if you have leaders who want to share that with you, because that'll accelerate your growth and development. With that, I'll turn it over and then we can have more questions. I can expound on some of these things, but I really wanted to iterate the importance of developing and growing your professional networks young, because it helps you climb to the corporate ladder, but it'll help you build customers and partners. Because even when you become a senior leader, you're going to do the same thing I did. I said, hey, who do I want to grab from my network to work with me? Like, you know, 30% of my team is people I worked with before at some time or level. and most of them got promoted when I joined. I brought them up as I rose up. So that's something to acknowledge.
Eddie, just on a couple of the points that you just said, that I thought, just to give a bit more experience that bolsters exactly what you said. I remember when I was a junior consultant being in a meeting with a senior partner, and we'd gone to see a client, and this was the first client conversation, like sales conversation I'd been in. I went with him to the meeting. Obviously, I didn't say much because I didn't have much to say. I was junior. I didn't have any real understanding of how the conversation was going to go. But when we left the meeting, I said, "Can we just debrief?" And I sat him down and I said, and I went through the questions that he asked, and I just asked, "Why did you ask these questions? Why was this the trail of thought that you went?" And I remember him saying, "Nobody ever really asked me why I do what I do. They pretend that they have all of the knowledge and then they go with it." But from my perspective, the most important thing for me wasn't that I'm never going to relive that exact situation that we just went into. So the answers to the questions that he got aren't really that massively important to me, but the reasons why he asked them, so understanding the knowledge that he was utilizing to ask the questions, is more important to me and more important to me and more pertinent to my future going forward. So I think that's a really good point, that the what isn't necessarily important, but the why is what actually gives you the knowledge to be able to apply it to your own situations and to grow. I think that's really important. And I just wanted to point out that Razan had pointed out that my session on mentoring, advocacy, and sponsorship is at 3:40. So if anybody wants to join, I'll have a lot more to say then. One other thing I wanted to say before I forgot was, please reach out to any of the three of us. We're on LinkedIn. You can contact us on here. Any questions, any relationships that you want to strike up, I encourage everyone to get involved, reach out to us. But both of the two other people in this call are absolutely lovely people. I am questionable, but
no, he's not. No, he's not. I mean, definitely reach out. I mean, like I said, I wish that someone had some of these conversations with me because I was the accidental tourist. The other thing I would say that I would encourage you to do is strive for new areas to work in. Like, I have a quasi funny story. So I had a friend who worked for an investment bank. He completed the MBA training, and they said, "Hey, here's two paths." He said, "Hey, you can go be a bond salesman to municipal bonds, just, tried and true." The other one said, "Hey, you can work in this newfangled thing called private equity." Well, we all know what private equity is today, and we all know the result of that conversation. The guy who went into the bond salesman is still trolling bonds, and the guy who went into private equity is not working anymore. So I encourage you to work in new areas, because it often provides opportunities that you don't expect. Take the risk, especially while you're young.
Yeah, that's good advice. Does anyone have any questions? We're happy to take questions if you want to put a question in the chat, or...
We're up to 90 people. Somebody's got to have one question. Chigoziem, would you please share your LinkedIn identity? I use your current display name. Oh, I think Razan will share it, but my name is Chigoziem, so it's a CHI in front of the Goziem. What are your thoughts, advice, guidance on making the most of a reverse mentoring opportunity? Can I answer this, just because I actually think this is quite important, right? So I've been a mentor for a very, very long time. I look like a child, but I'm actually quite old. So I think that my view on mentoring has changed over time. I used to think that as a mentor and as somebody who obviously supporting Black people is at the core of who I am as a human being, I thought that I had to mentor everyone. I thought I had to mentor everyone. And as I matured and I gained more experience, I genuinely feel that mentoring has to be a two-way relationship. As a mentor, you have to get something out of the relationship of you mentoring someone. I now have a better understanding of people I do not want to mentor, because I do not get anything out of the relationship. This is me personally. I have I want to be invigorated by my mentoring relationship. So I like to mentor people that, don't necessarily, it's not about having, like, knowing what you want to do or anything like that, but have a vigor for achieving something, have a vigor for bettering themselves, have a vigor for improving themselves. That's where I get joy. So somebody else may find joy in a different part of mentoring, But I genuinely, and I say this because over lockdown, I had a lot of people reach out to me for support, for, you know, I'm struggling here, but they weren't prepared to put in any level of effort at all whatsoever to change their situation. That's a difficult mentoring relationship for me. So my key would be find the thing that in each relationship that you find joy in, that invigorates you, and then hold on to that and connect to that, and don't necessarily spread yourself so thin across everyone. That would be my advice.
Hey, one comment on that, and then we go to other questions. Like, you know, take your time to prepare who you're talking to that you want to be your mentor. So there was a young man, you know, everyone has a busy schedule. He spent like 2 weeks getting in touch with me. We finally sat down and had to have lunch, and everyone's like, hey, he's like, I want you to mentor and work with me. I was like, okay. Then he says, I want to be a lawyer. Now, the irony of all this conversation is that he had my wife arrange this meeting, and my wife's a Harvard law grad and a lawyer. And it was like, dude, like, really? Like, you want to be a lawyer and you bypass my wife, who's Harvard law grad, is a lawyer, who could actually help you, just as a side note. There are some other questions in the Q&A tab. I just want to, I don't know how much time left. I'll try to read through the first two, and then we can decide who can answer them. Mm-hmm. One says, I don't know, why does it get blurry? I can't read it. It says, oh, how do I, well, just stop moving. How do I convince someone that I am able to add value to the company, etc., if I'm only just starting, but I do believe that I can do the work?
Okay, I didn't see that.
It's from Juliet Anina. I may have pronounced her name wrong.
Yeah. I'm happy to take this unless somebody, and Stacey.
You can take it because I want to take the one about not being seen and not speaking in the meetings.
Okay, no problem. So I convince someone I'm able to add value to the company, etc. If I've only just started up, I do believe I can do the work. So this comes up quite a lot when I do a lot of support of people with CVs and cover letters and things like that. And in a lot of situations, you don't have the experience on the documents to prove that you can add value in something that you want to do. So there are a couple of things. Number one is like really simple things. Signing up for a course that is related to the area that you want to get in is a surefire way to show interest in something that you don't generally have the capability, the experience to demonstrate that you can do it. So you've never done finance, you want to get into finance, sign up for IMC, CFA, something like that, right? And show that you've put your money where your mouth is. So you are dedicated in this, and that can go a long way to convincing people. Well, just to take a better look at you, and then when they get to the stage of you talking, you can add value that way. Second thing is transferable skills. People have they undervalue this quite a lot. Find other areas of work that you've done, experience that you've had, things that you've done outside of work, sports, being a captain of a team, playing in a team sport, like things like that, that directly translate to how you're going to work in an organization. Two more. One, when you're writing about your experience in other places, be sure to document the achievement that you personally have made, because that's your individual value that you've added to that role. So while the role itself might not be directly related, they're able to understand the impact of hiring you has on an organization. And then the last thing has just escaped me. I don't remember, but I don't remember what it was, but those three are pretty strong. So
yeah, those are strong. Can I just add to that? I mean, to what Gaz says, don't underestimate the value that you have, even if you don't have a particular expertise in that area. Because, and just to give you another example, I, run a marketing team, and I have young people who work for me, who come to me with new ideas they've seen for social and things like that, that they just have in their personal experience, but it is transferable in ways that you may not even realize it to work. So think about other personal experiences or other experiences, as Gaz was saying, outside of the office that things may be more transferable than you realize they are. And you can really add value by being willing to speak up and share those ideas. And the thing about speaking up, just to address that point, and I think, Eddie, you're going to speak about this too, is that as junior people, it can sometimes be very tough for you to speak up. We understand that. You don't have to feel like you have to speak up in a room with 40 or 50 people on a call or in a meeting, etc. But, I think that most leaders, we understand the value of having individual inputs from junior people, because that's how we also continue to learn and grow. And we're usually open. Put 15 minutes in your leader's calendar. Say, can I chat with you, have a virtual coffee or a real coffee for 15, 20 minutes, 30 minutes. People will give you the time. And there, in a safer space, you can feel free to share your ideas. And you know what? We're really interested in hearing them. because we're also looking for ways, even though we've been in this industry for 10, 15, 20 years, to grow and change and get better. You have more value than you think you have. So don't be afraid to share ideas and make the time to do it in a private or a personal space if you don't feel comfortable doing it in a meeting room full of people.
No, I definitely agree with that. And I think that goes to the question that says, you know, how can you be seen if you're not speaking up in a meeting? I understand the point and logic, but sometimes there's very few opportunities to make an impact. And I think you hit upon it right there about setting up time. I mean, when you're in a meeting, you have limited time, you know, especially as a leader. And I think what you have to also recognize, I'm talking from a consulting perspective and services, because that's the industry we work in. Typically, there's a series of meetings. There's never just like one meeting, right? There's always a series of meetings, and you have to pick your time to have your battle and give your contribution. You know, someone will notice that, hey, Bob the consultant or Jane the consultant speaks every time in every meeting, and they'll get known for it, right? But if you're the person who does not speak that oftenly, someone should say, hey, wait, this person does not speak that often. Let's listen to what they say. And if you're not comfortable doing it that way, to Stacey's point, you can set up time and set up 15 minutes later, or you can just pull someone aside after a meeting when it's a fresh thought and say, hey, you know, I was just thinking of this. Hey, can we do this? So don't feel, you know, no idea or suggestion is bad. You should just, hey, you don't want to be like, if someone else has made the point and used different words, let it go. You know, a lot of people don't do that. They pile on. And I can tell you, you know, I'm a sales professional. My biggest challenge is I get people piling on when we're talking to the customer. They want to add their value. And I'm like, no, be quiet. You can go to the meeting and not say anything. And to me, that's more valuable. In fact, that happened in a meeting recently, but I won't go into that right now.
The other thing, just one last thing, is that if you don't feel comfortable, you know, even putting 15, 30 minutes in the calendar with us, you know, sometimes my team has sent me a personal email. Stacey, you know, I was thinking about what you said in the meeting, and here are some ideas. So, and, you know, I still get the message, and then we'll reach out. So, you know, just feel free. You have more experience and expertise to share than you frequently understand you do. So reach out in any way that you feel comfortable.
And if you say, hey, I can't do that in my organization, you need to reevaluate the organization you're working with.
Yes, exactly.
Because if you don't have that culture, it's the wrong culture to work in, because they're not going to help you grow and develop over the long term. And you want someone that has an open, accessible environment, because you want to grow and develop and have some level of independence.
I couldn't agree with that more. And that kind of touches upon one of the other questions that are in here, that is around how long do you have to wait to reap the benefits of networking? It's really dependent on so many different factors. It's going to be about how you engage with the organization, with the people around you. Let's be honest, some people don't really want to network. They don't really want to connect with people, and it's going to be tough to build a network that way, right? And it also depends on the organization, to Eddie's point. If some organizations have good culture, some organizations have bad culture. I would say that Stacey and I tend to work in one that I think has a pretty healthy culture in terms of people being open. I would assume Eddie would say the same for Wipro at the moment. Like, it's a very open culture. We have a fairly flat structure. So you can go and talk, you literally come into the office and talk to any partner you want, any person you want about anything you want. We don't have offices for senior people and anything like that. Even in our old building, which was, you know, the size of a toilet, but we still had the concept of you being able to go and talk to anyone about anything. So, like, really evaluate your own approach to growing that network, and then also the organization that you're in and how susceptible they are to people being wanting to do that. There is no way that we can answer what time frame it will take. Like, in some situations, you may make a connection tomorrow, get promoted in 6 months. In some situations, it may be that you're not necessarily finding the right people. So there's no minimum or maximum time. Just put in something Eddie said, and Stacey said. Sorry, Stacey said it first, and then Eddie reiterated it. Just be really freaking good at your job. Like, start off by just being really freaking good at what you do, and then the rest of it should come off of the back of that.
Yeah, I mean, for the senior roles, I mean, the ground that I laid it was 15 years in the making, right? These are people I worked with 15 years ago, and as their careers grown and blossomed, they kind of brought me along with the next wave. I mean, you'd be surprised how many bosses or peers. I mean, my current boss, when we first worked together, she wasn't even my boss. I was supposed to be on her team, and I got traded like the night before, like on the trade deadline. Someone else met me and said, hey, I want Eddie on my team. She's like, hey, I don't know him that well. You can take him. And then like years later, she's like, hey, I want him on my team. So some of this, I would say, hey, it bears fruit, like, you know, down the road, and you don't see what's going to happen, but really, you know, focus on being really good at your job. I mean, I can't emphasize that enough. You know, I started out as a finance guy, and now I'm like the big deal sales leader globally. So I mean, it's like a big shift in careers, you know, and the level of responsibility. But you know, I think the opportunities really exist for us today.
So just another story that touches upon what Eddie just said. I remember work as one of the first roles I ever did in consulting as a junior consultant was for an MD in a bank. I was the most junior person on the team of about 20 or so people. I was really good, and eventually my client rolled off the whole of the team and left me behind because she thought I was very, very good. Spin this forward about 2-3 years. I was in a project that I was very, very unhappy in. And I told somebody, that a colleague with a big mouth, apparently, I told this person that if I was still doing this role if I was still doing this job in 6 weeks, I was going to quit. I told him this. He went around the houses and ended up telling one of the senior partners, who happened to be a sponsor of mine, the same thing. The partner called me and says, give me 4 weeks to find you something that you want to do. He found me a project that I wanted to do. But the way he found the project was because that client that I had worked with 2-3 years ago had a new piece of work. And she had told the partner said to her, what do we have to do to be able to win this piece of work? And she said, go and get me Goz and get me 7 people like Goz. That's what the partner told me. So that is somebody that I didn't even think was, that I had made that connection. I had grown that kind. From my perspective, it was just a really, really nice MD that I worked for and that thought I was very good. But you have no idea how long it's going to take for a particular relationship to bear fruit. It's just, to Eddie's and Stacey's point, being good at your job being good at your job, making yourself open to making those connections when they present themselves, and then seeing where the chips fall. We've gone over time, right? But I'm happy
Okay.
I'm happy to do more questions if you guys are. Somebody said, how do you know when it's best to move on from a mentoring relationship, and how best to without burning the bridge? I shouldn't answer this because I'm a serial bridge burner. So somebody else should answer this.
I mean, I don't think you burn the bridge when you move on. You move on to a different phase in your career, and it's the level and frequency of contact you have with that person. You know, if that person is continuing to contact and reach out to you, it's different. But I think, you know, things change over time in life, like personal and professional relationships. Some of the friends you had when you were younger, you don't have later, but you need different types of mentors. You know, as I became, you know, a senior leader, like the goal was like to be a senior leader. Now you're a senior leader. Like, what's the next goal? You know, the conversations I have with people are like, hey, how do you get on the boards of companies? You know, before it was like, how do I become a VP and an SVP? And as I progress in my career, it's a different set of people that help advise me on how do I get to that next phase. And I don't think people reflect badly on that. You just say you need something at a different phase in your career.
Mm-hmm.
I was joking before about being a serial bridge burner. I agree with Eddie. I would say the things that you want to remember is just open and honest communication. Like open and honest communication. If you have somebody who's a mentor of yours, and for whatever reason, it's not, maybe you're not that focused in that space anymore, or they're not able to provide the support anymore. To Eddie's point, you've reached a level of seniority where they're not that experienced anymore. The gap of the experience isn't that much. It's about having if you've developed that relationship with them over time, it's about having that open and honest conversation around, okay, look, this is where I'm at. I kind of feel like this is what I need. I'm massively grateful for what you've been able to provide for now. I think I just need to focus in this area. Probably best to do that than just ghosting the person, which is, you know, a bit unprofessional. Have an open and honest conversation with them, and I'm sure they'll be able to. I'm sure they'll see where you're coming from and understand, and maybe even put you in touch with somebody who is a better mentor for you now. So you still want to be able to keep that connection and go forward. So maybe there are some tips there to consider.
Yeah, There's a lot of questions I see about how to build your network, and I'll just start off, and then Stacey and guys can chime in. I think, you know, one of the first places is like there's professional associations related to your career field, and they have conferences. And so even if you're employed or unemployed, attending conferences is a good way to network in terms of, hey, meeting people who are in the same industry or the industry you want to be in, and sharing ideas and experiences. And understand also that I don't think you need to connect with everyone. You know, there are people you'll connect with because you just have similar interest outside of work. You know, I was at a conference, I sat down with this guy, he could be a potential customer. We were just chatting. I wasn't even thinking of him as a customer. And then, like, you know, later that day, he's like giving me his card, and I'm a sales guy. You know, typically I'm like, hey, can I get your card? He's like, hey, Eddie, here, we need to stay in contact. And then he found me when I was sitting having lunch. Hey, let's talk. So my point is, don't go to an event and say, okay, there's 700 people here. I need to network with all of them. I need to connect with 700 of them, right? You may go to the event. There might be 700. You might say, hey, these were the 70 I genuinely like, and, you know, we can connect with and build a relationship and a bond, and it'll work that way. But I would say, you know, look at professional, you know, networks first, you know, school associations, because then you share a common bond, you went to school. And then also think of your career path. One of the organizations I'd recommend all of you look into, it's called the Executive Leadership Council, and it's really designed for getting Black people on boards. You know, post George Floyd and the awakeness that the general globe has now had about people of color, I think they've said like there have been, the number of Black people on boards has increased by 30%. You know, so it's very significant. And although this organization is geared towards getting senior people on boards, they have training for people mid-level in their career and advice. So I would look at organizations such as that to join and network, because there's also a great opportunity for them to mentor you and network. And it is a global organization. You know, they have a lot of things in the US, but I was talking to a buddy of mine. They do some things in the UK. So look for those professional opportunities as you look to build your network.
Yeah, I would just add to that, in addition to professional organizations, the way that I've met people or have networked with people to have helped me in my career is, and Eddie mentioned this, is alumni associations. So I'm a member of the Columbia University Alumni Club, and believe it or not, you make a lot of connections there that will bear fruit later on. Or if you're in a fraternity or sorority, that's always a good way to meet people. And then I've also met people doing volunteering work on things that I'm passionate about, just by chance. If it's something, for example, I volunteer a lot and do marketing, and then they, you know, see the work that I do and like the work that I do, and then refer me to other things. So I think there are multiple ways. Clearly, industry associations are a great way, but don't underestimate the value of your alumni network from whatever university or school you went to, your sorority or your fraternity, and then other things you're just passionate about. You can sometimes meet people, and you'd be surprised at how, even if the person, what you're doing this event or whatever the activity is very different from your career, it can lead to things that benefit your career.
I agree. I think we've got one more question, and then we've got, our numbers are dwindling, so we should probably wrap up. So, the last question I see here is the market hard to get into, or am I just not applying myself properly? So first and foremost, I believe Capco have a dedicated session on like CVs and applying to jobs. So try and find that. We have some experienced recruiters that can give some advice around like those kind of topics. One of the things that I would say is somebody who reviews applicants and interviews is get somebody to review what it is that you are submitting. I would say that the general level of applicants, like documents from applicants, so CVs and cover letters, across the market isn't that great. So always try to get a second opinion. Try to talk to somebody who actually happens to be an employer to see what they think around how you're presenting yourself. I'm sure that organizations like Capco, like Wipro, like others, are missing good candidates, but don't just necessarily present themselves on paper in the most efficient and effective way possible. That's one thing that I would definitely suggest. Get somebody to review your CV, get somebody to review your cover letter. I do a lot of this help for people outside of work. So hit me up on LinkedIn if you want, and I can have a look, and we can talk a bit more around what exactly you're trying to get into and how I can support, or contact Eddie or Stacey, whoever you feel more comfortable with. I'm sure we'd all be happy to review and advise. But that would be my personal first. But Stacey, Eddie, please add.
No, I agree with that. I mean, I get CVs all the time for roles on my team. And honestly, if it's not presented well, or if it has typos or things like that, little things like that just make me, because there's so many that come in. And so you have to make sure that when you present yourself on paper, right, that's really your calling card. That's all we know about you. I mean, clearly we look you up on LinkedIn, but that's what we know. But the presentation, the writing, the way that you present yourself on paper really makes a huge difference. So if you don't feel comfortable that you have the skills to do it well, absolutely take a resume writing workshop. Or again, reach out to your mentors. I review resumes for people who don't work for me all the time, and I'm happy to do so.
All right. Great. Thanks everyone. Reach out to us on LinkedIn if you have any questions or comments. We'll definitely be available for you. But this has been good.
Great. Thanks everybody for joining us.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay, take care.
Okay.